Hello viewers, let me quickly introduce myself before proceeding with the training videos for PMI-ACP. I am Vinayak Agarwal. I am a PMP, PMI-ACP and an ITIL certified IT professional with an experience of more than a decade now in the field of business analysis, project management and agile methodologies. In this session, that is module number 3, I will be cultivating you with the Introduction to Agile Project Management. A rapid briefing of the topics which I will be covering today are traditional versus Agile Project Management, defined and empirical process, what is Agile, the Agile Manifestos, 12 Agile Principles, Agile Methodologies, Waterfall Model and Agile Project Lifecycle, Agile Framework and Terminologies, Agile Roles, APMF, that is Agile Project Management Framework, and finally we will end the session with the spectrum of process complexity. Moving ahead for Agile Project Management. If you remember in the module 1 and 2 we have discussed about Agile, a few very briefing about the Agile, that is it is adaptive, iterative and incremental approach, and few traditional basic project management. Now it's the time to discuss more into the depth of Agile Project Management. So before moving ahead into the Agile Project Management, let's talk something about what exactly is the difference between traditional and Agile Project Management. What are the versus factors? So if you talk about the Agile traditional approach, you see in the picture which I had provided in the slide on the right top corner that in traditional we have all the phases in sequence. That is analysis phase, which is then design, then coding and test. What it means is that you start the design phase only when the analysis is completed, and similarly the coding will be start once the design is being completed, and finally the testing can start only when the coding is completed. So this is what is the traditional approach. So we have one-off activities. That is, one activity is completed, then only we can start off the next activity or a phase in a project. But what Agile says, we do things in a continuous fashion. That is, we split the project or a final requirement into iterations, and we do the similar task, that is analysis, design, coding, but per iteration. So there is no, although there is no standard project management approach in terms of software industry, a project which is very well versed and can be worked in traditional approach might not be fully equipped if you adopt an Agile approach. So there is no hard and fast rule, or you can say a methodology or a numerical formula which can give you an answer that the traditional approach is more worthwhile to implement over to this project versus the Agile. So it is the few parameters you can judge. On basis of them you can take a judgment whether to go for the traditional approach or the Agile approach. So there is no standard project management approach that works for all projects. The choice of the right approach for managing project depends on various factors, like ranging from the complexity, type of project, to the experience in conducting projects of the organization, the customer's willingness to be adopt, whether your customer is willing to adopt the new methodology Agile or not, because there is a kind of a new hierarchy or a new roles being plugged into when you adopt an Agile methodology. So typically traditional project management works for most constructive projects, you can say, where the project can be completed in one sequence and the success is defined by completion of the deliverables in time and below the budget. So that is for traditional approach. But Agile, what says, it's better suited where the requirements are volatile and you don't have any fixed kind requirement. The requirements requirement change every phase of in every phase of the project. So for innovative projects, you can say, where you have innovation one image or a blueprint in mind today, but working in a rolling wave fashion, you might have a more innovative and a more enhanced version of your requirement. So where you can say, such as software development, where there are many risks, where the scope of the project is likely to change, and where there is an iterative methodology is needed. So in those scenarios, we will go for the Agile Project Management methodology. Just you can see the snap of Mona Lisa. So it is an iterative approach. I'm not saying the painter who designed it, the Leonardo da Vinci, had used an iterative approach, but it is just for your example that to have a replica of a Mona Lisa image, initially we have extreme left, you can see a hazy image, and secondly it's a more elaborative version, and finally we have a complete picture. So that is the kind this image is only to give you an example that this is a kind of an iterative methodology. In first iteration, second iteration, and third iteration is the final image. So this is what is Agile Project Management. Moving further, we have process, which we have discussed in our earlier module. So now I am moving ahead a level above to give you a two dimension of process. One is defined process and another is empirical process. What exactly is the defined process? So defined process is adopt the defined modeling approach when the underlying mechanisms are reasonably well understood. So when you have, suppose, in example, you have your final product in your mind. That is the defined process, and you have the product in mind, and you know what all steps to take or carry on to reach that particular goal, or to have that particular product ready. So that is a defined process. The best example is, you know how to prepare a tea. Every time you follow almost kind of a same set of processes. You take milk, water, tea, sugar, utensils, or the burner. So this is kind of a defined process. But empirical process might be in which the process is too complicated to define an approach. I mean to say, suppose you are not a good cook and you need to cook a pizza. So that might be an empirical process for you. You don't know what is the process, but you have an final product hazy in your mind, whether it will be a pan pizza or a thin crust pizza, but you follow some set of processes. That is empirical. That is not well-defined processes. You might call your friend, you might check the Google to hang out how the recipe works. That is a kind of an empirical process. So Agile is more towards the empirical process. That is, if the commodity produced is of unacceptable quality, rework is high, higher cost of empirical process, control is the only option. So what I mean to say from these is that you don't have any fixed product. Requirements might get changed. Suppose while you going or preparing your pizza, you might get a chance not to go for a pizza and instead of making some other dish. So that is an empirical process. And defined process gives a cost advantage where the product can be priced as a commodity, just like a tea, or you do a kind of a regular stuff. So for irregular stuff, you go for empirical process, and for defined process are the ones in which you have a final product in your mind. So if you see the graph at the bottom, so on x-axis we have a time parameter and y we have a cost. So cost of change curve gives you, for Agile we have a green curve, and for red one is for the traditional. So you can see the traditional one. So changes are resisted. So you have a final product ready at the end of the time and cost, once you have completed the cost and the time constraint. But Agile, we don't have any time and cost as a parameter blocking, because we don't have any scope in mind. Scope might get changed. Definitely we have a scope at the initial phase, but that scope is not concrete. It gets on revised every phase and every iteration. So this is what is defined process and empirical process. While answering any of your question going for Agile, just keep your mind and give a thought process to the empirical process. So what is Agile? Again, although I had talked a lot about Agile, but to give you a snapshot in a nutshell, Agile software development is a group of software development methods based on iterative and incremental developments. These we have discussed already in our earlier module, module 1, where requirements and solution evolve through collaborative between self-organizing and cross-cultural and functional teams. So if you can see the image, so instead of creating a big rock at once, that is instead of all at once, we do the things in an incremental fashion. We break this stone into pebbles, and we have done the things in an incremental fashion. So that is what gives the incremental approach is talked about by Agile. So it promotes adaptive planning. Adaptive planning, you keep the things in adaptive fashion. Adaptive planning we will be discussing further in our next slides. And evolutionary development and delivery and time-boxed iterative approach. By the term time box, again we will be discussing in the further slides, but to give you a quick brief, time box is a time-bound iterative approach. So every iteration is time-bound. Might be for your first iteration it is 6 days, and you need to keep the rhythm throughout your project. So if your 2 weeks iteration is iteration 1 is of 2 weeks, then iteration 2, 3, 4, and subsequently rest of the iterations would be of 2 weeks only. So that is a time box. Time box here is 2 weeks. Encourages rapid and flexible response to change. What exactly is Agile? Agile is nimble, as I said. So it is a rapid and flexible response to change. So since we have an adaptive, because we need to deliver response to change. Third point is, it is a conceptual framework that promotes foreseen interactions throughout the development cycle. This we have already discussed, so nothing new in this point. The snapshot, the image at the right bottom is giving you a view of how you divide your project into iterations, iteration 1, 2, and 3 for a master story list. Story list and other factors, we will be discussing these terms in our later slides. Now, before moving ahead to the Agile in depth, let's talk about the Agile Manifesto first. So what exactly is the Agile Manifesto? Manifesto are some set of rules, protocols, or kind of a commitment by the organizer or the group of people who promotes their view, or they say, just like a politician or a political party, they promote some kind of a manifesto in the public. On basis of those manifestos, they give you a vision that if the government will came into the picture, they will fulfill these criteria. So these are the Agile Manifesto, what Agile says. So it is in 2001, a group of 17 lightweight methodologies met, and this is the result of those lightweight methodologies in a nutshell. The meeting also represents multiple for extreme programming, which is an XP, again Agile methodology, Scrum, DSDM, then adaptive software development. That's all. So what are the Agile Manifestos? There are 4 points mainly into the Agile Manifesto. One is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So what is said, the Agile Manifesto gives priority to the left side, that is in this case it is the white ones are given the more priority over to the lighter ones which are marked in red, light pink. So individuals and interactions are the focus for Agile Manifesto over processes and tools. Although Agile don't say that processes and tools are not required, they are required, but give a more weightage to individuals and interactions. We will be discussing these points in more detail in our later slides, but a quick brief: working software over comprehensive documentation. These words are so simple, you can make a quick understanding by just reading it throughout in depth. It will automatically give you a vision that working software is important, definitely. Comprehensive documentation, who needs documentation unless and until the user is not a technically sound person. Third is customer collaboration over customer negotiation. So what Agile says, collaboration is more important than negotiation. Negotiation is also important, but we can't neglect collaboration. Responding to change over following a plan, because Agile is adaptive. We need to adapt. We need to make and respond to change, because the final result or the final vision is not clear yet, because Agile promotes change in requirements. So now we will be going to discuss all these individual manifestos in slightly depth. So individual and interactions are given more weightage over process and tools. So you can say individuals and interactions greater than process and tools. Although process and tools are also important, but individuals and tools and interactions are more important. So what do you mean by that? Focused on empowered, self-managing teams. Agile says make the teams self-managing themselves. You don't have a divert or a dictatorship style of working in agile teams that you subsequent your tasks to the lower hierarchy. They are self-managing teams and empowered enough to decide what to do and what not to do, and which is the priority thing and not. So autonomous teams, kind of an independent teams, do not need the day-to-day intervention of management. So agile restricts project management. Servant leadership roles comes into the picture when we talk about the agile, which we have already discussed in our earlier module. Third is management protects team. So from outside interfaces. What does it mean? Management is for a supporting hand for the software developers or the lower hierarchy. It plays the role of a servant leader. So it protects the team from outside blockages or interfaces, just to make their lives smooth and have a better efficiency so that they can self-manage. Fourth is agile teams are amalgamation of variant professional skills. Agile don't say that all the teams should be of a Java project team members, all are project managers, all are Unix developers, all should be PLSQL. So it's a blend of amalgamation of various professional skills. So you can divide your iteration based on their skill set, and everyone have a chance to get to work on another technology or a methodology also. So kind of an amalgamation of various professional skills. Agile team members are able to step in for each other as necessary. They worked as a team, not as an individual. Moving ahead, we have a second Agile Manifesto, which is working software over comprehensive documentation. Agile is not saying that don't document, but try to limit your documentation and give more weightage to working software, because working software is the final product for which customer and a user is looking for, not for the documentation. It's just like if your Facebook is only giving you manuals, and instead of the services, no one will read those manuals and log in into the Facebook page. So finally, the service or the end result is more important. What is focused by the Agile Manifesto 2. So traditionally, we measure progress by the percentage complete of the functional milestones. Earlier, what exactly we used to do? We measure the progress by the percentage complete of the functional milestone. But Agile team provides actual working product as a status report, which is product reviews. Product review, when I talked about, review by the end user, by the customer, by the product owner, a kind of a demo to the product. Once they give an acceptance, then only the product is the final, and that will give you a percentage completion or the actual health of the project or the product. Design changes as the system is built result in outdated documentation. Many times in traditional, what happened? Design changed, but the documentation still remained the same, because that is kind of an overhead for the individuals to update the documentation every time. So why to waste your time giving to those stuffs? So that is why Agile focuses more on working software rather than documentation. Although documentation is required, but try to be limited to the documentation and give more weightage to the product or the software or the service. For this, Agile teams prefer face-to-face communication over documentation. That is, which we have already discussed multiple times, that Agile promotes and favors face-to-face communication. So instead of exchanging emails and meeting MOMs, have a 15-minute quick meeting to have a face-to-face interaction and to have the communication in a more better and an efficient way. The third manifesto is customer collaboration over customer negotiation. Give more weightage to the collaboration. Collaborate unites people and helps and give you more weightage to understand their needs, and you also understand, able to showcase your style of working to them. So instead of negotiate, prefer collaboration. So contract negotiation, identify and define everything and spell out the payment and date specifications. Customer becomes a part of the development process. Earlier, what is customer? Customer is the end approval or the denier of a project or a service. but now customer is a part of the development team. We, at every end of the iteration, we showcase our product or an iteration demo to the customer, and once he gives an approval, then it's an acceptance, and that is the health of our project. So customer is collaborative and united with the team itself. It's a part of the development process. Writing specs down and throwing them over the fence is simply not effective. It's well said and understood. The next one is responding to change, rather following a plan. What Agile says, don't follow a plan, because none of the plan in the world is final unless and until the product or the service is finished. So every time, every day, every minute, your plan definitely will get changed. If it is not getting changed, either it's a flaw in your plan or flaw in your end result. Definitely, it's a proven mechanism. You can check it very well. So respond to change. Learn how to just respond to change. So it's much easier to respond to change when the organization and the customer share a clear understanding of the project status. The second is, in plan-driven environments, all requirements are specified upfront, broken down to the task level and estimated. So when the plan is driven, when the requirements are not finalized and you still make a plan, definitely your plan will going to change once we have more details of the requirements. So once you proceed at each and every iteration, your planning will modified and enhanced version will come. So at the end, if the project manager starts with the version 1.0 at the start of his, for the project plan at the start of his project, at the final, at the closure, you may see that the project version will be 100, 1.100, 1.2. It's something like that. It's a kind of in hundreds or plenty of versions over to modify. But what Agile says, response to change. So if don't make a plan, work with iteration and create your project plan iteration wise. So Agile plans follow for a rolling wave approach using top-down planning. Over to Agile Manifestos, which we have discussed for. We have 12 Agile Principles also. So these are the principles. You will definitely get many questions based on Agile Manifesto and Agile Principles both in your ACP examination. So just try to remember these Agile Principles by your heart and understand each and every concept of these 12 Agile Principles. So what Agile Principle 1 says, our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So priority is customer and early and continuous delivery for valuable customer. Point 2, that is principle 2, welcoming changing requirements even late in development. So it doesn't matter we have completed our iteration or not. If the requirements are changing, we welcome them. And Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage, because market is competitive. Suppose your customer have an X requirement today, might be he have an X plus Y requirement at the next very day because of the competitive market. Third is deliver working software frequently from a couple of weeks to couple of months. Follow time box. That means to say follow time box and try to deliver working software, and that too on a frequently basis. That depends from your commitment to the customer, starting from couple of weeks to couple of months. Try to squeeze this time scale to the shorter as possible. So as to, it's a simple example. If you are creating something, if you see the result early, you will be happy, and that makes customer happy too. Principle 4, business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. So that is a kind of a stand-up meetings, in between the product demos, iteration reviews, all this. Customers or the business is a part of the development team is set by the point 4. Principle 5, build projects around motivated individuals. Give them the environment and support they need and trust them to get the job done. That is self-managed team. And project manager is the servant leader. That is all the crux of this principle. Principle 6, agile processes promote sustainable development. That is phase-wise, iteration-wise. You have a smooth rhythm. The sponsor, developers and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely, that is throughout your project. Seventh is working software is the primary measure of the progress. As said in earlier principles and manifesto also, it's well clear and understood. Eighth is the most efficient and effective method of conveying information is face-to-face. So what I said in earlier modules, communicate, 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 and try to have the communication face-to-face. Face-to-face, face-to-face. If face-to-face not possible, go for video conferencing. That is the most effective and efficient method. This is what the principle 8 from Agile. Ninth is continuous attention to the technical excellence and good design, which enhances the agility. Instead of documentation and other stuff, more focus on your good design and technical excellence. And that is a continuous process. It is not the end of the world that in your iteration 1, you do a good design and you forget to do the things in iteration 2 and 3. It's a continuous throughout your life cycle. 10th is simplicity. The art of maximizing the amount work not done is essential. The best architectures, requirements and design emerge from self-organizing team. If you give the team the power of freedom, that is independence, they will innovate. They will do the things in the best fashion they can do. That is, design emerges from the self-organizing and self-managing teams. And the 12th and the last one principle is, at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. That is then kind of a continuous improvement after every iteration. So at every closure of the iteration, you do a retrospective, you do what we have did well, what we haven't did well. So you club and you try to improve in your subsequent iterations. That is, you fine tune and to do the things more effective in the later iterations. The next is the umbrella for the agile methodologies. So we have several agile methodologies into this umbrella, that is Scrum, extreme programming, DSDM, feature-driven development, and many more. But Agile generally more focuses, your ACP examination more focuses on Scrum, extreme programming, some percentage for DSDM and feature-driven development and test-driven development, and Lean and Kanban. So along with Crystal. So in all, to prepare for the examination, I recommend you to give more focus for Scrum and XP, but don't forget Crystal, FTDD, Lean and Kanban also, apart from DSTM. These are the only. They have n number of agile methodologies, but currently ACP exam is giving priority to these which are under the agile umbrella. Moving ahead, this is the iron triangle paradigm shift which I had presented in my slide just to give you a difference between the waterfall model and the agile project life cycle. So, agile triangle. So in waterfall you can see the fixed scope. Scope, that is the requirement, is fixed. What are the variant and the dynamic parameters? Cost and time. So plan-driven approach creates cost-time estimates. So in your planning, you need to keep in mind to vary the cost and time. That's why we have a cost variance and the schedule variance in waterfall approach. Two, because we have the scope is fixed. But in Agile, we don't have the scope as a fixed parameter. It is what? It is kind of a dynamic, or you can say the variant scope. The scope is not fixed. It is going to change, might be every iteration or every phase of a project. So you have to fix your cost and fix your time. We have a fixed cost. We can give you an example. Scrum recommends 5 to 7 as your team members, plus minus 2. So between 5 to 9, sorry. So your cost is fixed and your time is also fixed, because in Agile we follow time box. So risk declines as project progresses, but in risk might get high in your waterfall approach. Also, change-driven approach creates feature estimates. This is what is all about Agile. So just remember this triangle to have a quick glimpse between the difference for the Agile and Waterfall approach. Just remember, Waterfall we have a fixed scope, but in Agile we have a dynamic scope. Moving ahead, we have an Agile framework and terminology for Scrum. So quickly, let me share you about the Scrum. So in Scrum, we have a product backlog in which we have all the requirements of all the scope as a product backlog, which will be owned by product owner, which input from end user, customer, team, and other stakeholders. Definitely, once the product owner finalizes and gives the priority about the requirement 1, 2, 3 to the team decided how much to aim to deliver in the sprint. So manager don't have the right to give you the team the direction that you have to deliver these number of requirements in a particular sprint or iteration. It is all self-driven and managed by team itself. So sprint planning meeting is done by team. Definitely product owner and Scrum Master are also part of those sprint planning meeting, but it is primarily focused for team. Next, what is the output for sprint planning meeting? That is sprint backlog. So product backlog is shrink to sprint backlog. We have a Scrum Master which take care that every phase of an ceremony for Scrum is conducted with as per processes of Agile methodology. So we have a Scrum Master also in place. So after that we have a product backlog grooming. So every sprint, suppose it is of 4 weeks or less, which is the time box. So once you complete an iteration, you have your iteration review, and based on your review, your product backlog gets groomed again. Might be some iteration don't cover this requirement, you might to move that particular requirement to the next iteration. So during sprint, no adding to scope, no extending of time box. So you can't change your sprint from 2 weeks to 2 weeks and 1 day because your sprint is demanding. Restrict to time box. And finally, we have a potential shippable product, which is the working software. And to manage all the Scrum activities, we have a daily Scrum meeting in which we have 3 questions, as I said earlier. And over to the once we have a complete of a sprint, we will go to the sprint reviews. And finally, the sprint retrospective, which is an iteration retrospective and is a continuous improvement process. Moving ahead, the same Scrum structure, but in a more detailed way for a product owner, team, stakeholder, and Scrum Master, the roles and responsibilities, which are well pretty understood. A quick briefing: stakeholders are everyone who is related to the project, product owner who has the complete ownership in the defining of the sprint goal, team defines the commitment and the sprint tasks and commit to delivering a sprint goal, and finally we have Scrum Master, which facilitate and coach to the team and guides the product owner in many cases also, and stakeholders also. So Scrum Master serves as the Scrum expert by facilitating and coaching. And over to that, we have a product backlog, which is managed by the product owner, and team takes the inputs for the sprint from the product backlog. And in every phase, we have a feedback mechanism also, which is kind of a retrospective or a reviews or the demos. Moving ahead, we have Agile Project Management Framework, which is kind of a replacement from the PMP version to ACP version. That is, in PMP, we have project initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, control, and closure. Here they are being replaced with Envision, where we have a vision, speculate, then release plan, explore, finally adopt, and ultimately either go to the speculate phase again, and at the end we have a closure, which is the final product. And all is adaptive based on the story backlogs. The more detail is Envision, determine the product vision and product objectives and constraints. That is, we have a vision in mind and the team together will work to meet the goal. Speculate, develop a capability and or feature-based release plan to deliver on the vision. So speculate is to deliver the vision and explore is to planning. So planning is being replaced with explore. Plan and deliver running tested stories it's only not running and tested stories in a shorter iteration, that is time box, constantly seeking to reduce the risk and uncertainty. And finally, we have an adapt, which is review the delivered results, the current situation and the team's performance, and adapt as necessary, and leading to closure phase, in which we have conclude the project or a product, then pass along key learning and celebrate the success of your iteration. In a nutshell, how you decide whether you have to adopt the agile methodology or the traditional or the Kanban or a waterfall or a lean mechanism. So this is a kind of an process complexity spectrum which gives on the left hand side you can see a square graph in which the x-axis is for the technology and y-axis for the requirements. So the orange color reflects where we can go for the agile or the Scrum methodology, because we have requirements for team agreement. So we don't have fixed requirements, and the technology might be also going to change. So we don't have anything fixed. So that's why the orange color is for agile. So orange, where we don't have the fixed technology and fixed requirements, we will adopt for agile or Scrum. But suppose we don't have more rigid technology and requirements creep in place, then we will go for more enhanced version of agile, which focuses on lean, that is a continuous development. But suppose if we have a close to certainty and the close to agreement is clear, that is the green factor, then it's a simple project. You have your vision clear, we will go for the waterfall. And in between the in between the agile and the waterfall, you will find a yellow layer, which is for the Kanban projects. So that's all for today for the session module 3. Thank you very much for your time. Bye. Goodbye. Take care.